This is the Winkle Report with your host, Ferd Winkle. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ferd Winkle, and welcome to the Winkle Report, where we keep our eyes open so you don't have to. Tonight we're talking with CJ Ackright from Paz. CJ, welcome to the program. Why don't you tell us why you're here today?
Thank you, Ferd. Have you ever heard of the Bourgeois?
No.
What is it? It is a council of mega-wealthy individuals who are out to control the world through economics.
Sounds like Walmart.
Same purpose, different characters.
In the history of civilization, there has been only one factor that has proven itself to be a universal across all cultures. It is the exchange of goods for services, what we know as the economy. The development of agriculture led to the development of trade, as settled communities found they could not produce all of the goods they needed to maintain themselves. Trade, originally based on barter, expanded when promissory notes were exchanged for goods not available or needed at the time of the initial transaction. Standardizing these promissory notes to a common value for greater use was the basis for the development of the monetary system. With the development of commodity trading and the first stock exchange, essentially a futures market in Antwerp in the early 1400s, money became the first universally accepted symbol that the world could share regardless of language, culture, or religion. This stock market was in a building owned by the Van der Burg family, and as the idea spread and exchanges were developed in other cities and countries, these exchanges became known as Bourgeois, and the members of the Bourgeois trading community were called Bruges. The present-day cabal, seeking to establish economic dominion over the planet, calls itself the Bourgeois and its agents Bruges to honor this beginning. They view themselves like the Bourgeois as the bringers of a new order, and they use coins like this to signify the changes they're working to bring about.
May I see that?
They use these coins to identify themselves to each other.
Is that Janus?
Yes, Janus, the Roman god of transitions, looking to the past and the future at the same time.
How poetic. So what are they, the Bourgeois, doing that makes them any different from Walmart, Amazon, or any other commercial enterprise for that matter?
It's the amount of direct control they use to determine economic outcome.
Oh, okay. The first public stock was sold in 1602
By the East India Trading Company to ameliorate losses of trading vessels. With this beginning, the potential to garner wealth through investment took off, and for the next 300 years the money barons went wild.
Wait, are you saying that this Bourgeois conspiracy has been around since the early 1600s?
Well, we're really not sure how long they've been around. What we do know is that with the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand in June of 1914, the economic ride came to a screeching halt as the world's great powers aligned themselves against each other in one of the deadliest and costliest wars in human history. The Great War, World War I, brought with it the realization that, left on its own, mankind's genetic drive for superiority could eventually lead to its own extinction, and vast fortunes were lost as the money barons realized their own susceptibility to social upheaval. It was apparent that culture, language, and religion were not capable of preventing such a catastrophe, and in fact could be considered causal factors. So a group of influential men met to propose a method for preventing such an event from occurring again. They felt that economics provided the only constant that could ensure peace, unite the world, and of course, maintain their own continuing prosperity. The first official record we have of a Bourgeois attempt to control policy was in the influencing of the Treaty of Versailles and the refutation of Woodrow Wilson's 14-point peace plan by the French contingent. The French were members of some of the oldest Bourgeois families and had suffered the greatest losses during the conflict. They insisted on making an example of Germany by forcing it to pay for the total cost of the war. Unfortunately, this failed miserably, and in hindsight, the reason for it was relatively simple. The German poor and middle class were placed under a crushing burden of taxation as inflation bloomed out of control, while the rich retained status and privilege. This created a great deal of resentment and was one of the leading factors in propelling Adolf Hitler into prominence. This first attempt to use economics as the sole means of social control led directly to World War II. The Bourgeois realized that economics by itself wasn't enough, and they needed to discover more effective methods of social control. To further this end, the idea of cheap higher education was promoted with the goal to create a vast pool of knowledge on the human condition. Excuse me, are you saying that the push for higher education in the 1950s and 60s was a result of manipulation by a secret cabal with designs to take over the world? In this country, yes. That's exactly what I'm saying. By then, the bourgeoisie had expanded to include an alliance with like-minded individuals in this country, and we had become an experimental testing ground for new theories on social control. The Vietnam War showed the problem with unrestricted education. An educated populace was capable of thinking for itself and demanding to be heard. This made it extremely difficult to manipulate and control, when what the bourgeoisie desired was a populace that reacted to stimulus without critical thought.
Wow. They don't sound like nice people, do they?
They want to control the world, for the history of man is a litany of violence. The struggle for survival and dominance has controlled the very nature of our existence. There's nothing nice about it. It doesn't make any difference if you use a gun, a stick, or a dollar bill. The goal is power.
Okay.
It was decided to shift the focus of education away from the pure purpose of gathering knowledge for its own sake. This was done by gradually defunding state education and allowing corporate sponsorship to take over the financing.
Why?
It did two things. It developed a system whose dedication was to those funding it, and it created an inhibition within that system about antagonizing its patrons and future employers.
What about the political process?
Well, that has always been up for grabs. What was needed was a way to occupy the populace so that it could be manipulated into acquiescence.
All right.
By the early 70s, studies in psychology, sociology, and political science had shown that the human mind could be satisfied with very little in the way of stimulation. The first PC was in 1971, and in 1972, Pong was introduced to revolutionize the gaming industry. By 1985, the country was wired up with cable TV and the web had taken hold. The bourgeois are looking to develop a society of economic slaves upon which they can feed, and the trend may have gone too far to stop. The educational push created a self-perpetuating technological base which showed that fewer active members of the society are needed to maintain the economy. At present, we're dealing with a population that has little ability at critical thinking and vacillates between apathy and rage with nothing in between.
What do you mean?
Full employment with a meaningful wage has become a thing of the past, and the push for globalization is forcing wages down to a base level that is well beneath anything we would call middle class. And meaningful jobs with adequate wages will continue to drop until a balance is achieved with the rest of the world, which is a median per capita income of around $2,900.
A year?
Yes, a year.
Even if that's true, what can we do about it?
Nothing the way things stand at present.
What do you say?
Our idea of the economy is based on a system of barter that is no longer relevant in today's world. The fiction that it is one of the three great lies foisted off on humanity to justify the existing status quo. It will never be broken until we revise a different system with different standards for the allocation and control of resources.
If we can't do anything about it, why bring it up?
What you do not appreciate intellectually, you will experience emotionally.
Who said that?
It's an obscure quote from someone you've never heard of.
What does it mean?
Look at it like this. Suppose you know a hurricane is coming. You can board up, stock provisions, or even leave if necessary. If you don't know what's coming and just think the wind is picking up a bit, you're going to be unpleasantly surprised. Knowledge is like that. It allows you to prepare.
Prepare for what?
The bourgeois conspiracy is falling apart and it's taking us with
I'm
it.
sorry, but what the hell are you rambling about?
The bourgeois are a microcosm of the world. In the 1600s, Europe became the leader in economics. In the 1800s, America joined them in power and American and European bourgeois united. After World War II, factions also developed in Asia, Japan, and Russia. By the 1980s, Europe, America, Japan, Russia, South America, China, and Asia all had their own groups, and by 2000, the Middle East had become a power in its own right. But in the process, they've also become like the UN, fractious and at odds with attaining their goals. The result is going to be a worldwide escalation of poverty with the creation of an elitist class ruling over what is essentially an economic slave population.
Wow.
You're just cheerful as hell, aren't you? You mentioned 3 lives. What are the other 2?
This has been the Winkle Report.